Brian Rushing here with this week's Crusaders Corner. Last week we had head coach Jason Williams of the women's basketball program discussing some of the rule changes that would take place in the upcoming season as it pertains to women's basketball. I'm going to change directions a little bit. Here with me today is the head coach of the Crusaders men's basketball team, Coach Martin Unger, to discuss some of the rule changes that are going to be taking place here in the upcoming men's basketball season. Coach, I definitely want to thank you for your time. And as I was able to do with Coach Williams earlier, I want to give you the opportunity to sort of lay out the important rule changes that are taking place for the upcoming season.
Well, there's several rule changes on the table here, but let's talk about three that's really going to be specific to noticing what's going on in the game. And those three are obviously going to be the shot clock that's going to go down from 35 to 30. There's going to be a 5-second guarded too closely rule that's going to be taken away. And then lastly, the timeout situation where there's going to be less timeouts and coaches aren't going to be able to call timeouts during free play.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the shot clock rule first. The rule going from 35 seconds, which was in play last year, down to 30. If you look at the rule in theory, it appears that it's going to make the pace of play faster and make it a more exciting game. However, one could certainly argue that it's going to only benefit the defenses by means that they only have to expend 30 seconds worth of energy on the defensive end maximum as opposed to the 35 seconds.
Well, I tell you this, we played 2 games last year with the 30-second clock, and I did not see that big of a difference, but I can see a difference as teams get more used to playing with that shot clock, that they can use different defensive strategies to create problems to where you're going to have to take maybe an ill-advised shot late in the shot clock, or you're going to create maybe a turnover because guys might get panicked a little bit after shortening the clock. So I can see that there might be a defensive advantage, but I think the whole purpose of this rule was that the committee felt like they could speed up the game and get more scoring and more offensive output by shortening it so that guys had to make quicker decisions. We'll just have to see how that plays out as the year goes on.
Well, another thing that's also going to really influence the play this year is that 5-second rule that no longer exists in the men's game. Kind of give us your thoughts on what it puts as far as a premium on solid guard play at the college level.
Well, I think this rule here in particular is much more important than the shot clock rule, only because as a defensive team, in order to negate a good ball handler or the offensive team, you could get closely enough to him to where he had to give the ball up. Now you can't do that. So what will happen is, I would assume or guess that people will probably back off now and let them shoot jump shots instead of driving it, because there's no benefit of going out there all the way out to make him dribble, because there's no 5-second rule. So for all those people that don't understand what that rule was, you had 5 seconds to hold the ball. If I was close, like I am to Brian right here, he had 5 seconds to either dribble or pass. If he started dribbling, that was another 5 seconds. If he picked it up, it's another 5 seconds. But that's close, closely guarded. If I backed away, that rule didn't apply anyway. So what people will probably do is just back away and let him do what they would normally do as no one was guarding him.
From that standpoint, then, do you see more coaches at the college level going to zone defenses and sort of lessening their ball pressure, or do you see more coaches desiring to put ball pressure strictly from the standpoint of, I believe I can rip the ball away from their point guard and create an easy transition opportunity?
Yeah, I think there's going to be more of backing off a little bit, to be honest with you. I don't think teams are going to be pressuring as much because there's no benefit to it. Because the way, they're trying to clean up the style of play too with the physicality. So if you get anywhere near where the arm bar or you're hitting a defender, they're going to call a foul. So if I don't have 5 seconds and they're probably going to get a call a foul, I'm probably going to back off a little bit. I'm not going to say it's necessarily a zone defense, but I'm just going to say people are probably going to back off a little bit with the pressure.
And finally, the last major rule change from your vantage point is the coach having the inability of calling a timeout during live play. Now, this is something that goes back from a generation to where at one point there was actually college basketball being played to where the coaches could not call timeout on a live ball situation. We're now going back to that scenario. What's that going to do for you as a coach?
Well, it's going to take an adjustment, first of all, especially after last season. As you can can tell we had a really young team. So when things were really discombobulated and confusing, I could call a timeout, bring them over, and regroup. Now they're not going to have that ability. So for young teams, it's going to be a lot harder. For older teams, really not going to be that much of a difference because they're going to be pretty savvy already and they're not going to need a timeout. But if they're, this kind of takes away the run of they're making a run, you bring the ball in. Now I can't call a timeout if they've already brought the ball in. It's got to be a dead ball situation or the ball goes through the hoop and I call a timeout before they throw the ball in. So it's going to be more on the coaching, thinking of when I can call timeouts, and it's an adjustment for us as coaches as it is to the players. We also now have knocked down timeouts, so there's not 5, there's only 4 now to try to speed up the play of the game as well. So now you've got to kind of take that into consideration as far as spacing out your timeouts and making sure you have enough towards the end of the game where you're used to having one more.
And one final question that I would ask you, Coach, in this regard is, it sort of is going to create more of a coach on the floor type mentality out of your guys, which is probably going to season them even faster in their growth and development at the college level.
Well, no question. We'll have to incorporate a lot more drills and practice as far as getting them prepared to put them in situations where they're not going to be able to call a timeout, or I'm not going to be able to help them, or the coaches aren't going to be able to help them in that situation. And that'll be good for the guys to learn quickly and learn how to do that, and become better leaders and better ambassadors for this game.
More information is available on the www.abbeyathletics.com website in regards to a lot of the new rule changes that are taking place for both the men and women in the upcoming season. Coach, thank you so much for your time.
No problem. I enjoyed it.
Folks, for stats, standings, stories, and more, there's only one place in cyberspace when it comes to your Crusaders. That place, www.abbeyathletics.com. For Coach Unger, this is Brian Rushing. This is the Crusaders Corner.